Okay. Sorry for the extra time, but that's what happens when you are not very experienced at running hybrid events, but we should be fine right now. So I should also tell everyone that this is being recorded and it will be made available to our members for the sake of, keeping the knowledge that has been shared with us by other organizations. And yes, I suggest we kick this off. So welcome everyone to the 4th Active Citizenship Talks. And this will be focused on input from active citizens themselves. We have here a collection of people with a large variety of different backgrounds and different topics and issues of interest. So I'm sure this will be a fascinating session. A little bit of background about what we're doing here. This is the Active Citizenship Lab. It is the European Youth Parliament's initiative to make sure that our members have some sort of structure to be active citizens beyond their participation at the European Youth Parliament. And this is happening through individual events. This is happening through national associations of the European Youth Parliament. And we're trying to gather as much input from external members and from more experienced of our members, such as Nora here. And yes, without further ado, if nobody has any questions, I will actually, according to our schedule, I will give the word to Constantin Alexandru Manda, who is a Romanian activist for equal access to quality education for every child, and who was awarded Young European of the Year 2021. So congratulations for that. And if this is okay, we will give everyone sort of a 10-minute slot for introductions and introductory remarks, and then we will be taking questions from our members here and from people joining us online as well. So without further ado, Alexandru, you have the word.
Thank you very much, and hello everyone. I'm very honored to be present today among you in this afternoon. My name is Alexandru Manda and I'm 22 years old, and from the age of 14, I started to be an activist for educational justice. I started my my activism in my hometown in Constanța, if you know it, at the seaside of the Black Sea, the Black Sea coast of Romania. And at this moment, I was in the schools council, in the student council at the county level. And with my colleagues, I started to advocate for the rights of school students to discount on the public transport. But the Students' Council in Romania, the Students' Council is under the Ministry of Education at the local level, under the Schools Inspectorate. They have no legal personality. They are not a legal person. And in 2013, the Schools Inspectorate, the representative of the ministry in territory, visited us at their headquarters and told us that we can't advocate for the right of school students to discount on the public transport because we are under them, and they controlled us, and they are not allowing us to do that. And at this moment, we felt that if we want to represent the rights and interests of our colleagues, we need to do it from an independent structure. And we founded the first independent school student association in Romania, Constanța School Student Association, an organization who aimed to represent and protect the rights and common interests of school students from this county, from Constanța County. And I'm very honored that from 2015 to 2018, I was the president of IHM. And during my terms, we obtained respecting the law on the school students' rights to discount on the public transport, to social and merit scholarships, or free textbooks at all the years, especially on the last 2 years of high school, when until 2016, the school students in Romania need to pay their textbooks, even if the law of education told that all the school students from the first class to the last one, to the senior year, had free textbooks from the Ministry of Education. We for obtaining the respecting of the law, for obtaining the respect of the school students' rights, we did some advocacy actions, and we actually made a complaint in justice against the Ministry of Education. And after the trial, the Court of Appeal of Constanța condemned the Ministry of Education to assure the textbooks for all the school students in Romania, a right provided by the law of education, but violated of the ministry 5 years from 2011 to 2016. At the moment of speaking, I am a law student, a third-year law student, and from 2018, after I finished my work as a school student representative, I am the programs coordinator at the oldest think tank in Romania, the Romanian Academic Society, where I coordinate educational programs on good governance in education and community building at the grassroots. And yesterday, no, 2 days ago, on Thursday, we had the final event of the second edition of the Clean Schools project. On the background, there is the Clean Schools Guide, the guide for monitors for good governance in schools. And this project was for 18 months, an initiative who aimed to grow up strong local active communities of school students in 5 counties in Romania, in order that to advocate for the respect of school students' rights to scholarships, and for more money from the local authorities for investments in schools. Because in Romania, if the local authorities did not respect their legal obligation to assure money for investment in schools, the school students and their parents came with money from their home and pay for the obligations of the local authorities, which they don't want to respect. And in these five counties, we had 464 localities of intervention. And after our advocacy campaigns, after 18 months of grassroots works, we assured that we managed to obtain an improvement of 30 millions of euro at the budget of education in these 5 counties. And we did it with advocacy instruments at the grassroots. We managed to convince the monitoring authorities, the institution of prefect, and which is the representative of the government in territory, and the school inspectorate, to respect the law and respect their attribution to monitor and assure that the school students' rights and the law of education is respected in the counties, is respected in territory. And after public pressure and discussion with the mayors, with the local councillors, and with their specialists, we managed to obtain this improvement of the local financing of education, which have great output on assuring the right of every school student to access to education and to a quality educational system. From the age of 14, this is my desideratum, that every child in Romania deserve to have access to a free of cost and fees and quality educational system, because the education is the most important weapon entire Europe can use for assuring that tomorrow we'll not have 2 classes of citizens who had access to learning, and the second class citizens who didn't have access to quality educational system. At the moment of speaking, our generation is witnessing the fourth industrial revolution, the digital revolution, which is present in our lives every day and make our lives easier and better. But the digital revolution came with a threat, in my honest opinion, witnessing the gaps between people who had access to education and people without access to learning. And if the states and the government of the world will not understand that we need to assure access to quality education for every child, tomorrow we'll have two worlds, and this will be this will widening the gaps between people. And of course, education is also a very important weapon that Europe must use against extremism, against hate speech, against violence. Thank you, everyone, and I'm here for your questions.
Thank you very much, Alexander, for this introductory statement. It's very inspiring to see that, I'm sorry for the echo. It's very inspiring to see that a lot of active citizens actually start by picking their battles when they're actually in the middle of it. You were a very young high school student and you noticed blatant inequalities in your direct surroundings, in your everyday life at school. And this is how you got into being an active citizen and advocating beyond your own level and the level of your classmates, but actually going and reaching for the Ministry of Education in your country. So congratulations for that. And thank you very much for sharing your experiences with our participants. Next, we will actually be hearing from a speaker who is very active in climate change, in climate action, and this is Joshua Almunuk, and he is a passionate climate justice activist from Uganda, and he often participates in climate strikes. He is the administrator for the Rise Up movement and an active member of Fridays for Future. And he fights for integrity and equality, and most specifically, to advocate for the importance of climate action. And so, Joshua, you have the word.
Yeah, hello, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we're just putting the sound back on. Now it should be good.
So my name, can you hear me? So at Rise Up movement, we believe we cannot eat coal, we cannot drink oil. We put people above profit, and above all, we fight every crisis. My name is Almunuk Joshua once again, and I'm very privileged to be a part of this. I thank you very much, everyone who has been able to come and to join on this call, so that we are going to discuss more about our activities. So from Rise Up movement, we're inspired very much by Vanessa Nakate, because she's the one who began the move. Vanessa Nakate, who brought us together. Several group of activists are together in this group called Rise Up Movement. We have covered a couple of milestones through our activities. First of all, we began as fully fighting for climate change, only climate change. But we observe that climate change is linked to a couple of things. Climate change affects several things. I'm going to break our milestone through all those things that climate change affects and how we address them. From climate change, we observe it affects sustainable energy and cheap energy. If you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, you'll observe that almost all of them are affected by climate change. And observing these challenges in our country, in Uganda, we couldn't sit back and wait. Observing how climate change is affecting energy costs in Uganda, how climate change is affecting food security, how climate change is affecting all the Sustainable Development Goals you can see. We had to work twice. We had to improve our efforts and to bring all activists together. So I'm going to start with the issue of climate change and sustainable energy. In Rise Up movement, it's spearheaded by Davis. We believe climate change, if we don't address climate change, achieving sustainable energy and clean energy will be a far-fetched fable. It will be hard to achieve it. If we don't address climate change, we shall never get the clean energy we desire to get. Also, part of us, there's also a section of climate change and gender equality, because we believe where there's no climate justice, there will also be no gender equality. Because in my country, in Uganda, when climate change strikes in forms of drought, in forms of famine, the vulnerable suffer more. And in Uganda, women are among the vulnerable people, because they're the ones who look for the food, who look for the fire, to take care of the local families at home. So if we don't address climate change issues, we are going to observe the vulnerable people, the women, suffering more, and more, even the vulnerable people who are physically challenged, mentally challenged. So that's also another issue that climate change directly affects, because it's a goal number 5, sustainable development goal number 5. Also, another issue is climate change also affects that we believe climate change is linked with education. We believe one way of addressing climate change is also involving climate change in education. This is spearheaded by Acham Evelyn, an activist very active in NGO activities, Rise Up movement, and also Fridays for the Future. Because we believe if people are taught, if students are taught in Uganda right from their childhood, if they are taught about climate change and its adverse effects, everyone will fight together to change this climate change. Because we believe small acts put together by a number of people, they cause a drastic change. That's why we are also pushing into educating children, educating in different schools about climate change and its adverse effects. Because we don't only do online activities, we also go down to the schools to address this climate change and its adverse effects. Because we believe climate change and education are connected. Also, I believe plastic pollution and our consumption patterns. In one of the development goals, we believe in sustainable production and good consumption patterns of people. We observe a lot of plastic pollution, a lot of pollution going on in our country, because it causes diverse effects in our country. And we believe it's not only in Uganda, it's in the entire world. So we also we have strong activities trying to address the plastic pollution and its adverse effects on the country and on the soil. We believe climate change also is connected with the health of the people. Right now we're in a pandemic, and this virus moves through the air. We believe everyone depends on air. If we don't address climate change, the quality of air is going to worsen daily and daily. Today we are complaining about COVID. If we do nothing, tomorrow we shall be complaining about the bad air, the poor air, and people will not be able to live in this kind of bad air. So we couldn't sit back as youths in Uganda. We couldn't sit back as a Rise Up movement, and we had to do something. That's why we are doing several activities to raise awareness about climate change and how it's going to affect the quality of air. That's the Sustainable Development Goal number 3. Also, we are very sure that climate change affects food security. In some countries, food might not be a very hard thing to get, but in Africa and in Uganda, getting food is not very easy. And if you add climate change in the equation of getting food, it makes the hard situation of getting food even much harder. That's why we believe our work of climate change and our work of activism is not only about us. It's much bigger than us. It's much bigger than the people we are seeing now. It's much bigger than Uganda, because the effects of climate change move in every country. They don't respect any border. They don't respect any race. Climate change affects each and everyone. So in Rise Up movement, some of the milestones that we have achieved, we carry on several school activities to educate children in the forms of improving on the sustainable energy. We have activities of installing stoves, installing of solar panels in different schools. Also, in campaigns of gender equality, we do them online and also physical. We do several educational activities. We do several things. That's why every section, we give a specific activist to spearhead that section. However, we have several challenges because it's kind of a new thing in Uganda. Many people confuse climate change with political activities. They confuse climate change with moves against the ruling government. However, climate change, these are activities that we are teaching, but climate change is something good. Climate change, us addressing climate change, there is no we are linked to any political moves, but we are linked to everyone's life being improved upon, everyone's life being made much better. Because if we don't address the issue of climate change, if we don't address the climate emergency, there are several goals among the sustainable development goals that we shall not be able to achieve. That's why in Rise Up movement, we believe Climate change and addressing its adverse effect is very important, and it's supposed to be done by each and everyone because all of us contribute to this effect, and together we have to fight the issue of climate change. There's a question that I was requested to address our major motivation today, because our motivation came from way back, from seeing all the effects of climate change. We have experienced them firsthand. We have experienced the long droughts, we have experienced the famine, we have experienced the dry spell, we have experienced most of the things, the effects of climate change. That has been our motivation. But also recently, we have been motivated also by the ECOP, East African Crude Oil Pipeline, because we know what it's going to do. It's going to affect several people on its way. It's going to affect game parks, it's going to affect game reserves, and diverse effects that we have observed of oil spills. We felt we couldn't sit back and watch all that going on. So we have several activities that we are carrying on, but because of time, I'll end here, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Joshua. It's very inspiring to see how you and the Rise Up movement have been carrying this struggle for climate justice and climate equality. Thank you very much specifically for recalling the intersection of climate action with gender equality, education, pollution, global health, and food security, just to name a few. It is not a standalone issue, and that is critical to be reminded. Thanks as well for recalling the importance of the Sustainable Development Goals as a roadmap for collective and comprehensive action for the future. And thanks also for making the distinction between climate action and politics, which, you know, can sometimes people see politics as like this black box that nobody understands and where everybody is the same. So thank you for making this clear distinction that climate action is required no matter what the political situation is. Thank you very much. And now we will actually be moving on to our next speaker, who I think everyone in this room has at least heard of, and that is Nora Baruba. She used to be a member of the European Youth Parliament's governing body between 2017 and up until last year. She served as co-chair of the World Economic Forum's annual meeting in Davos, Switzerland in 2019. And she has extensive experience in a wealth of different arenas as an active citizen. So Nora, without further ado, I'll give you the word.
Thank you, Tariq, and it's great to see so many people. And I'm very inspired by the previous speakers. I want to start by saying that I'm not the founder or initiator of anything. So when I speak, everything is essentially joint ownership with the people that I've worked with right now, but also in the past. But I believe that the best way I can use my skills and my time is to strengthen and develop organizations and their people. And I hope that perhaps I can inspire you to get engaged in civil society, to seek leadership positions and create the change that you want to see. My own ambition in life is to create societies where more people have power to shape their own lives and their societies. I'm a fierce believer in youth organizations and our unique role in shaping society, building democracies, and holding truth to power. And I think that the composition of leadership in the world today is very old, very white, and very homogeneous. And I want to change who has the ability to shape society by strengthening tools for active citizenship, expanding civic and democratic space, and getting more young people to seek political office and engagement in their societies. So I'm more of like a multiplier, and I want to be supportive of other people's endeavors for change. I've been involved in civil society for 18 years, which is almost, I was about to say almost my entire life, not exactly my entire life, but a big portion of it. And I come from a Swedish Algerian family who has always had very passionate political discussions around the dinner table, but where I always felt that I didn't know how to change those things. So I've always tried to seek answers to those questions, and then also share those answers with others. As Tariq said, I was 4 years on the governing body of the EYP, and I think EYP is one of the greatest platforms for citizen engagement and provides a safe space for young people to explore their interests, get equipped with tools and networks to shape society, but also to formulate opinions. My hope is that more EYPers take the skills and interests that they gained in EYP and use those to activate themselves in political discourse. And I think sometimes we are maybe a bit afraid of engaging in politics and in political discourse, because the people that are representing us today might not look like us. It feels like it's a scary endeavor, but I hope that we can change the face of leadership and political leadership. I also took that notion of active citizenship to heart in EYP, and I've engaged myself in many different places. But I wanted to speak specifically of one and how we work to empower young people and youth organizations in Sweden and across the world. So I've served now for almost 4 years on the board of the National Council of Swedish Youth Organizations. And the last 2 years I served as vice president. And LSU is the umbrella interest and cooperation organization for children's and youth organizations in Sweden. And we bring together over 80 national children's and youth organizations with, I think, over 700,000 active members. So the fact that young people, I think there's a misconception that young people are not engaged. 700,000 young people in Sweden that have the potential to shape society and that are shaping society, I think is an immense force. And in LSU, we develop young leaders and youth organizations and work to improve the conditions for youth organizations, both in Sweden and across the world. We have 7 partner organizations that we work very closely with on common issues of democracy and civic space in Zimbabwe, in Kenya, in Belarus, Philippines, Myanmar, Lebanon, and in Turkey. And we work with the rights-based approach and human rights as a starting point in everything that we do. And we also work to get young people represented in political fora and in international fora. So in the Council of Europe, the UN, the EU, just to name a few. And our latest strategy is focused on expanding civic space, which is my passion project and issue, because democratic rights and freedoms are being challenged all over the world. And civil society is not an exception. The democratic space of civil society organizations is shrinking, and we want to be a guardian of civic space for youth and youth civil society. And this means that we need to work to hinder causes and effects of shrinking space and work to enable a conducive and expanding civic space. Across the world, we are seeing increasing hostility towards civil society, human rights defenders, and activists, and young actors in these spaces face the worst consequences and the least protection. Climate activists, democracy activists, human rights activists, and the hatred and threats against young activists and youth organizations is more widespread than we previously thought. In LSU, we have been tracking these developments in Sweden and in these with our 7 partners. And just in Sweden, 46% of all children's and youth organizations have been exposed to threats and hatred in the past year, 46%. And this is a real democracy issue, because it means that We self-censor. It means that the space is not safe for everyone. It means that particularly organizations, LGBTI organizations, ethnic minority organizations, religious organizations, feminist organizations, climate organizations, they face grave threats from the public and mostly from adults. And as a result of our advocacy, the Agency for Youth and Civil Society Affairs in Sweden has been commissioned by the government to carry out a nationwide survey on these harassments, threats and violence directed at youth civil society organizations. And in addressing this issue, it is essential to ensure legal hindrances are removed, financial resources are made available, political attention is maintained. And the fact that we use this phrase, expanding civic space, is because it's not good to only protect a space that was never good or big enough to begin with. We need to expand civic space and the narrative around civic space. And my source of motivation is and has always been achieving change by placing power in the hands of young people and in the hands of more people. There is so much in society that can be resolved by seeking change in leadership, both political and civil leadership. Today's young generation is resistant, passionate, and with the right support, systems and infrastructures can challenge the status quo and push our societies to become more sustainable, equitable, democratic, and peaceful. And I hope that you and other young people realize how much potential you have to achieve change. I think we sometimes think about people in power, whether it's politicians or people in leadership positions, as some, super extraordinary people, and that's why they must be there. That's not the case at all. So use your skills, use your passion, use your tools to activate yourselves, both within EYP and outside of EYP, and seek networks and places where you can achieve change together with others.
Thank you so much, Nora, for sharing your thoughts and experiences with being an active citizen, and especially for giving us the perspective of a youth active citizen. Thank you for reminding us that it is not always safe to actually get involved in societal question and fight for equality, be it for climate action, be it for gender equality, and all sorts of other causes. And thank you for reminding us that people in power are no better than us, really, and that we have the right as citizens to demand to be heard, and we have as much legitimacy in decision making as they do, if not even more, given our weight as a collective unit. Thank you for that. And I will now introduce our last speaker of today. Nikola Buric is joining us from Switzerland. He is an environmental engineer with more than 10 years history of work in various NGO and in the IT sector. He's focused on sustainable development and the transformation of urban ecosystems and the empowerment of its stakeholders. He's also the CEO of an organization called eDiaspora, which links basically the Bosnian diaspora in Switzerland and organizes projects between the two countries, which an organization that's supported by the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, so the Swiss government, within the Global Program for Migration and Development. He's also a project board member in a project called Diaspora for Development, which is implemented by the UN Development Program and the International Organization for Migration. So truly a Swiss knife of active citizenship, if I may. And I will now leave the floor to you, Nicola.
Yes, thank you, Tariq, for short introduction. Thank you, everyone, for inspiring stories. And I was reflecting actually a lot during your inputs. Should I speak about the project where I'm involved at the moment, or should I explain why did I become who I am? And maybe like a short, brief introduction. And it's maybe related to the story, how did I end up in this position and function, is that actually I was born in former Yugoslavia. I'm not sure if you know the historical or political context about the fall of former Yugoslavia. I was born in Bosnia, and even my parents were not actually Bosnians. My father is Serbian Orthodox, my mother is Catholic Croatian, and they were actually peace activists. And in 1992, I was only 10 years old when war started in Yugoslavia. And as a refugee in Serbia, I witnessed a lot of injustice, social and a lot of violence. And I started to be quite active when I was only 15 years old. I participated in the student demonstrations in 1996, 1997. And it's actually in Guinness Book of Records. Students were on the streets for 4 months, trying to, overthrow the government that was autocratic, not to say like kind of a tyranny. And it was quite important experience for me actually, because I realized by only demonstrating and organizing rallies and strikes and general strikes or complete civil disobedience, we didn't achieve a lot. Actually, regime was so powerful and strong that they managed to be patient and to wait for us until we were really tired. And it was in the middle of winter. So we had to wait for another chance. Like in 1999, when NATO bombed Serbia, I was 18 years old and I survived already second war. And we tried again to overthrow the government and the regime, and we were demonstrating for 100 days, peacefully, non-violent. We organized different panel discussions, theater plays, concerts, cinemas, and we created kind of a festival where we managed to open a space for dialogue and to speak about all these challenges that we were facing in that period of our time. And maybe it's also interesting that I lived for almost 13 years in Serbia without having a documents. As former Yugoslavia collapsed, I didn't have Serbian citizenship. Later, I obtained Serbian citizenship and Croatian and Bosnian. So now I have 3 passports, but I live in Switzerland for 4 years and I still don't have documents. And somehow more than 17 years, I live without documents in different states, national states. And yes, I wanted to tell you that beside this peace activism, political activism, actually I studied environmental engineering, because I realized as well in that period of my life that I want to deal also more complex problems and issues and challenges, and not only focused on the West Balkan region. And then we had another political question and issue in Serbia. There was assassination of prime minister, like in a film, and then I realized that I need something really to change in my life in a way that I was always angry and aggressive, and then I realized there are all these problems, but let's try to look for solutions. And then I started to observe chemical elements, how do they behave in urban cities, and carbon dioxide, on oxygen, nitrate, and etc. And then I realized actually that there are many solutions all around us. And I was observing a lot and reading a lot of books, watching films and making interviews, and especially in the food systems, energy systems, mobility, waste, etc. And then I realized actually that we needed more solutions in the sphere of economy. And then I started to study more economy and economical system and global financing system. And that inspired me in one moment to start working in IT sector, because we had quite fascinating in history like inflation. I can just say that within 1 month, for example, in 1993, we had inflation of 300 million%. So if you can imagine a bill with 500 billions, like with 11 zeros that you cannot use for anything and you cannot buy anything. And then we were experimenting with local alternative complementary currencies. And then we started to build up local economy based on mutual credit system or resource-oriented economy. And then I realized that technology can offer us actually a lot of good solutions in a way that we can build up tools. And as I said, after all these frustrations that I had, like being on rallies, marches, demonstrations, strikes, disobedience, etc., I realized that we as a society, we need to build up alternatives. And as long as we are fighting against something, we are going to fail. And in that sense, I started to hang out with people who inspired me and who were progressive in that sense. And we started to build up tools to be able to offer something. And then we were thinking that all structures will become obsolete and that people will move somehow together with the movement that was created all around us. And yeah, like different grassroots movements, different local groups, and yeah, in that sense, I can say that it helped me a lot, not only like in professional development, but also in personal development, to surround myself with people who were able to inspire me and to support me on a eye level. And we were developing, as I said, different tools to be able to create a society with deep and comprehensive transformation of all parts of society, including its values and structure. And that was kind of a new self-managed society that was based on autonomy and abolition of all forms of domination in that sense, like state, capitalism, patriarchy, and all other forms that affect human relationships. And with this, especially in a natural environment. And then we had kind of conscious and strategic actions and we wanted to compost obsolete structures, like to really use this fertile soil to recover those values and qualities that could enable us to live in a life in a common. And yeah, as the most promising entry point of that collective change, we saw a new economical system. And that gave to all of us kind of opportunity to finally exit this vicious circle of capitalism that was enslaving us and having all these side effects, and to find space of new ideas and without boundaries, and to make possible to switch to a healthy life and balance with the nature. And in that sense, I came to Switzerland, and I was already then engaged in a lot of different movements and initiatives. I don't want to use the word project because project by its definition has its beginning and the end. And I don't like this terminology that says that we have to have deadlines and milestones, because deadline means like that line is dead. And what I, in that sense, wanted to say that this is like kind of a life mission that and life itself that I live. And what else I wanted to tell you before I give you time to ask questions? Yes, that I came to Switzerland and that I realized that beside offering these tools, there was some need that I felt that now living in Switzerland, I realized that I'm quite privileged, that I have a lot of resources, that I can also support somehow my peers and the networks that I have in West Balkan countries. So I started to work in this organization that it's kind of a bridge between two regions. And what we are actually doing is that we are providing this platform, and it's a kind of a space where we use different methods like art of listening, art of hosting, and within our network, we are facilitating a lot of processes with different stakeholders. For example, we have 27 institutions, more than 70 NGOs, and companies, entrepreneurs, etc. And what we are trying to do is actually to give people opportunity and equal rights, and no matter where do they live, like either in West Balkan or in Switzerland, and really to be able to hear each other and to understand each other, and not to speak about the top of the iceberg, but to realize what are the sources of the problem and what is the thing that we cannot see on the surface. So yes, thank you a lot for this opportunity, Tariq, and for everybody who joined this call. And I'm really happy and excited and thrilled to see that you are engaged. And if you want to connect, I will leave my contact details and we'll be happy to support you in any possible way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicola. Every time you talk about your life story, I realize how much, you know, the seeds of active citizenship also grow in conditions that aren't the easiest. You find your courage in adversity. You realize that you're on your own and that things aren't working for you. And yeah, you just found the right people, you found the right places, you questioned everything that you thought was unfair. And I think that is inspiring for you know, aspiring active citizens who maybe sometimes feel stuck in superstructures that exist and that sort of oppress their freedom to either, you know, just be themselves or to engage in activities with other young people or supporting people with less privileges. So I think that is a very motivating message, also philosophically, that everything you see isn't necessarily as powerful as you think it is, and that we as a collective also of young people especially have the power to also question all of these old existing structures. So thank you very much for participating in this panel debate, everyone. Thank you for your inputs. And now I will open the floor to questions from the room and from people who are also joining online in the Zoom. So if you have any questions, just feel free to raise your hand either physically or virtually. And we have one question from Alyosha, who will be asking it right here. So he is coming and you'll be hearing from him.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, I'm Alyosha. I'm one of the active citizenship shapers. This question, I would love to hear from all the panelists if you have input, but I was really struck when I wanted to talk to you, Joshua, because I really enjoyed your presentation, and I also really appreciate the work that you and the others in your movement are doing. I also thought it was, to be honest, not to like throw shade at anything else that we've been doing, but really refreshing to hear from something outside Europe as an organization that has the word Europe in its name. It's really great to hear about similar initiatives happening on other continents even. And I think it's especially important to hear about climate activism in Uganda, because it's a reminder that climate change in particular is one of these issues that's truly global. It's not just Europe, it's not just national, it's not just European, it's global. So one of the things that we've been kind of navigating around in over the past few days is this tension between kind of local and the global. So a lot of what we're trying to do in implementing active citizenship in EYP is really bringing it back to the local and really trying to root all our activities in what our regions, our community partners do. And I wanted maybe to get your input on how we can do that. So how we can really kind of root our work in local, the areas that we implement our events without having like European blinders, without having a parochialism that leads us to neglect the kind of global issues that animate us. So maybe a different way of asking this question is, not to like pressure you, but what would it look like for you, for us as the European Youth Parliament, to be in allyship, to be in a kind of critical solidarity with climate activism in other parts of the world, without neglecting the fact that we are rooted in our own local surroundings? And if others have input on this, I'm sure you've thought about this too. So maybe if Joshua, if you want to offer some thoughts.
Yeah, hello. Thank you very much for that question. I'm very happy again to speak because I'm very passionate about this climate issue. So I believe how we can bring this more local to be customized to the people down here, because we believe many people contribute to climate. For example, in Uganda, when people are consuming certain things, they don't know that they are actually contributing to the climate effects. Not say. So we believe we can extend this down to the local people. First of all, if we increase more on our sensitization activities, because we do sensitize mostly in schools and some local groups. However, we don't do it so much because of the fuel limitations. And I believe how the European Union can help, how it can come in for us to increase on these activities. Mostly, first of all, we can share with you our plans, the plans that we have, and share with you how these plans are going to, how these plans can join together with the local activities and how they can help the local people. Yeah, from those plans, you can assess them and also assess them so that we improve the plan and make it much better. Because I believe many people in Uganda who are contributing to climate change don't know they are contributing to climate change because they are not aware about climate change. Yeah, that's my response.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Joshua, for your response. Do we have any other questions from the room? Yeah, okay. Another Nicola will be asking a question.
Hello, hi. My name is Nicola, I'm 23, I come from Serbia. And my question is obviously going to be for someone that shares my name. First of all, thank you so much for being here and for maybe sort of introducing this unique perspective that not necessarily many of my peers will actually understand or will have heard of. So thank you for that, definitely. So my question sort of would be focused on what do you think the messaging of young people should be in terms of this sort of outrage, and this environmentalist movement? In a way, I think that we're all pretty sort of unhappy, obviously, with the current situation, how everything in terms of climate change and these sort of alarming facts, but I don't think that we necessarily know how to structure this and how to approach it and what to be, in a way, say, outraged about everything, but sort of what should be the main messages. What do you think is the place to sort of hit in order to sort of maybe implement these environmental technologies and actually start things moving instead of just sort of these like broad approaches, if that makes sense?
Thank you very much for the question. Yeah, in my case, I know that it helped me to connect to do networking a lot, because networks are building resilience. And especially if we are speaking about climate catastrophe, there are like different movements that are already offering solutions. Like I know that a lot of people from Deep Adaptation Forum or Permaculture Transition Degrowth, resilience. Yeah, if you start connecting with those people who were pioneers maybe 30, 40, 50 years ago, who spoke about these challenges already like in 60s, 70s, we can learn a lot, like this transgenerational exchange, or also peer-to-peer exchange. And yes, I think that it's important to think globally and to act locally and regionally and local matters for sure. And if you are curious, we can stay in contact. Tarek has my contact details and we can exchange more. Thank you.
Okay, once again, thank you, Nicola, for reminding us as maybe newcomers in the active citizenship world that we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time, and that there have been people in every region of the world dealing with the same issues for 30, 40, 50 years. So building strong networks with people who are already involved can only multiply the effect of our actions. So thanks for this reminder. And we actually have a question coming from the Zoom room, someone called V, and I will give you the floor.
Thank you so much to all the panelists. My question goes to Joshua. I'd like to know what he thinks needs to be done to make the climate movement more inclusive and also climate conferences more inclusive. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. Thank you very much for that question. I believe we can make the climate movement more inclusive, first of all, by amplifying the voices of the most affected, because very many people are affected by climate change and by activities that bring about the climate change, and their voices are suppressed. Their voices are not heard. For instance, many people are affected by oil pipeline projects, by oil spills, but their voices are always suppressed as possible. So when their voices are suppressed, effects of climate change keep seeming to be as like something read in the book, something far-fetched. But I believe if the voices of the vulnerable, of the suppressed people by climate change are amplified the more, climate change will be more inclusive. People will start to receive it positively, because most people feel like it's not there, it doesn't affect anyone. But I believe if the voices of the affected are amplified, climate change will be more inclusive and the activities will be smoother. Yeah, that's my response.
Thank you so much, Joshua. Thank you. And we actually have a question in the chat, which I think relates to what Nora and Alexandru have mentioned in their introductory remarks. The question comes from Edwin, and it is that most youth activists experience threats in their activities. And what can we do to ensure that we are safe to carry on the activism? If maybe Nora or Alexandru would like to say something about safety, the safety of spaces in which we evolve as youth activists, that would be very welcome.
Do you want Thank you very much. Please, Nora.
No, go for it.
Thank you very much for your question. And from my experience, I think the most important instruments to assure the safety on carry on the activism is the public pressure. And if on our activist work, we use the instrument like Facebook or other social media channels to present our activity and to present what we do as activists on some fields, we also assure like head of protection for us during our activity, because if we go public, it's more difficult to attack the work of the activists.
Yeah, I think there are two components. I mean, when we talk about civic space, we essentially speak of the public room in which activists and organizations are acting. The first conversation is, how do we create safe organizations? And this has to do with, countering bullying, harassment, ensuring organizations are safe spaces that can maintain membership from a diverse group of people who all feel welcome and safe in the organization. That's the internal responsibility. But the second responsibility is on the outside. It's things that we can't really control. It's the external factors, groups, etc., that makes us unsafe. And this can be either states. I mean, there are many states who are not keen on citizens speaking out, who are not keen on citizens having the right to freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, who are putting activists in prison. And this needs global continued attention, especially from us who might live in countries where the space is safer than in those places. But even, let's take my own country for an example. Just because our safe is not as unsafe, our space is not as unsafe as in the rest of the world, doesn't mean that it's okay here either. It's everything from sharing strategies, pushing for laws, changing attitudes, ensuring that there's money for security. One of the things that we've pushed for in the past years is to make sure that there's allocated funding, because there are many organizations who cannot hold their activities without contracting security because they are so afraid of their safety. And that means that all their money went to security. They had no money or very little money to spend on their actual activities. So make sure that there's allocated funding for those kinds of things. And as Alexander said, public awareness, public pressure, but there can't be public awareness if people are not aware of the extent of the issue. So that also means that research is needed to actually point to the severity of the spaces and the civic spaces. I see that.
Thank you very much, Alexandra and Nora. I hope this was a satisfactory answer for Edwin. Thank you for recalling the importance of making your work public and having, even more public pressure on those who may be threatening activities of active citizenship. And we have two more questions. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. So I will only be taking one more, and then I will ask our speakers if they have any concluding remarks. So we'll take the last question from Evelyn.
Thank you so much. I would like to ask Joshua a question. What's the biggest challenge you see this year when it comes to the climate movement, especially when we are preparing for the biggest conference of climate, that is COP26. What's the biggest challenge you see this year when it comes to COP26? Thank you.
Hello, can I answer it?
Hello. Yeah, did you get my question?
Yes, I got your question clearly.
Okay.
Okay, so the biggest challenge that I see for COP26 this year, because there are so many activists, and this is a very big event. It's an event that activists have looked forward to learn more, to share more ideas, because we believe different people around the world have different ideas that we can use together. And as one of the participants said, that in some cases, we may not really event that we can learn from other people. So I believe this event being made virtual might hinder some other activists. Some other activists might find it a challenge to attend a virtual COP26 event. So I believe if there's a way we can make it physical, even for the activists who are in less privileged places or in less privileged positions, we believe it would be much better for them, because they seek to learn several things from this event. Yeah, I hope I've addressed your question clearly. And also, let me also use this opportunity to address another concern. I also believe in our activities as activists, we would love also to extend more help to the vulnerable people, because as we are educating them about activists, there are some that are so vulnerable that they can't access basic needs, even like internet, money, but they love activism. Even some cannot access vaccines, because now there's a vaccine that is hard to get these days. It's the COVID vaccine. Yeah, Evelyn, hope I've addressed your question clearly.
Thank you very much, Joshua.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Joshua, for your answer. Thank you for reminding us as well that we as active citizens are also somewhat privileged, some more than others, obviously, but somewhat privileged to have the time and possibility to give our time and efforts for the common good, and that we should always root our activities in the needs maybe of those people who don't have the time or the capacity to get involved in societal issues such as climate change, alternative economies, youth rights. So thank you very much, everyone. I would like to ask Nora, Nicola. Unfortunately, Alexandru left us because he had another meeting, but if you have any concluding remarks.
I'll start. I was waiting for someone to unmute themselves. I think what I want to leave you with is politics is personal and personal is political. So there's not really any separation, and it's important if you have the chance to use your active citizenship for good, to activate yourself, to use your privilege for good, but also use your privilege to invite others into your activism and your engagement, and to find the causes and entry points that work for you. I think we speak a lot about finding the right issue, but sometimes we forget to speak about finding the right entry point. Changing societies takes all kinds of different peoples and skills. You might be creative, you might have a great notion for doing communication or for doing advocacy, for recruiting. So find that strength that you have that you can leverage for good. If it's drawing, or if it's writing political manifestos, or if it's inviting other people in, find your role within a movement narrative.
Thank you, Nora. If maybe Nicola or Joshua would have a last couple of words.
Thank you very much. My last couple of words, once again, I'll say, at Rise Up Movement, we believe we cannot eat coal, we cannot drink oil, and we put people above profit, and we fight for every crisis. My last remark, I would say, and it would be a humble request, is for us to amplify the voices of all activists, even activists that are less privileged. We believe they also have something, so they believe they have something to add onto the climate change struggle. So my last request is for us to amplify, to do everything in our power, to amplify voices of all activists around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. Maybe Nicola?
Yes, I would like to thank you once again for everything that you are doing already. And from my own experience, I know that active citizenship is quite energy and time demanding. It can be also overwhelming. It can lead to a burnout, and it can be frustrating. And in that sense, I would just encourage you to build up networks around you who will support you and who will help you in moments of crisis. And yeah, don't feel also burden on your own shoulders only. It's a systematic problem, and it needs, yeah, like this transsectoral and multidisciplinary approach. And in that sense, please, yeah, don't do it by yourself. I liked what Nora said, that, yeah, I also didn't initiate any project by myself. It's good to have people like Tariq or others next to you. So good luck and all the best for all of you.
Thank you so much, Nicola. And with those kind words, I would actually ask everyone to turn on their cameras if they can. We're going to take a virtual picture, so a screenshot, of course. So show us your nicest smile. Ali, if you have any instructions for the picture, don't hesitate.
No, we can just wait for for Berlin to get all ready, and yeah, I guess smiling isn't going to matter for those in face masks, but if everyone else wants to smile, that would be nice. Okay, you're just about ready there. All right, so 3, 2, active citizenship. Okay. 2 more, just hold it, hold it. Nicola is really holding the smile. So yeah, just holding it, and 1 more. Amazing. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye.